Please be seated. All right. Is counsel for the state ready to continue your examination? Is defense ready to bring the jury in and continue?
Yes.
All right. And if Agent Henshaw will resume his place in the witness chair. Of course, you're still under oath. Bring the jury up. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll recall that when we began a recess that the state was conducting direct examination of Agent Henshaw. Is the state ready to continue that?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Is the defense ready also?
Yes, thank you.
All right, then you may continue.
Thank you. That one. There it is. All right, I'm going to put up for you and before the jury what's been marked for identification purposes. The State's Exhibit A546. Before the break, we were testifying about, or you were testifying about some blood that you'd found in the front porch area. And again, is that general area depicted on that diagram?
Yes, it is.
Okay. In addition to the blood that you found in that area, did you also examine that front porch for signs of ballistic incidents or ballistic evidence?
Yes, sir, I did.
And take us through, if you could, explain what your observations were on the porch with respect to any signs of shots fired, ballistic evidence.
If you recall, a few photos back, we saw photographs of the front porch, and that would have had a railing around that porch. We began to we're now working our way. As you can see, we're getting closer to the front door of the residence. We had 11, 12, and 13 down in this area. Now we're approaching the front door. And when we get into that area, we begin to see or better document the things that we had visually seen earlier. And you will see, or you may see, what we refer to as BE and then 1.0. The BE would represent ballistic event, and the 1.0 would represent a entrance of a bullet hole. When we got to the porch area and began to examine that, we got out to where you see the number 15 listed in this area, and there was some laminate flooring that was stacked up in that area. And looking through that, we actually located what we believe to be a partial bullet or a bullet in that area. And we did label that, and it would end up being item number 15/BE 1.0.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes. It states exhibits A146, A149, A150, and A151. And Mr. Johnson, can you put A146 on the screen for us? All right, could you tell the jury what they're looking at in State's Exhibit A146, what's depicted in that picture?
Again, these are my photographs, and if you're standing down in front of the porch, and you recall earlier we saw photographs again with item number 11. Now we're in that general vicinity of that top step where item number 11 would have been found. If you look directly in front of you in the photograph down near the bottom of the mobile home where it meets the porch, you will see an item number 14.
Okay. And were you able to look at that, examine, and determine what was there, or what caught your interest that caused you to label it item number 14?
It appeared to be a fragment or the jacketing from a bullet.
I'm going to show you what's been marked, or we're going to put up on the screen what's been marked for identification purposes. State's Exhibit A149. Again, can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, we've been able to orient it in A146. Now we're moving up closer to item number 14 just to get a better general view of what that evidence is.
In State's Exhibit A151.
Exhibit 151, that would be a close-up shot of item number 14. We know its location based on the previous photographs, and we can see characteristics here that it appears to be a jacket from a copper jacket from a bullet.
Okay. With respect to what you marked as item 14, the bullet or the jacket that's depicted in that picture, first of all, does that truly and accurately depict the way it looked the day you found it on the porch?
Yes, sir, it does.
And again, tell the jury how you went about collecting that item.
This would be something that normally we would, once again, I spoke earlier of the blue disposable tweezers that we use. Normally that's what we use to collect something of this nature.
Did you in fact collect that item?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A499. Do you recognize the markings on that document?
Yes, it is my evidence number 14. It appears to be my original label documenting the contents. This packaging has my initials on the back from the time that it was collected.
Can you tell the jury what you remember being in that?
What I remember being in it, and I'm filling it here to see if it's there, is what represents item number 14 in the photograph, which would be this copper jacket.
Can you open State's Exhibit A499, please?
Yes. This exhibit, item number 14, which is my item number, it is in a small individual package now. Most likely would have been placed by a lab worker or a scientist or somebody that would have looked at this.
Okay. And again, do you recognize State's Exhibit A499 as the jacket that you collected on that day?
Yes, I do. This is what we collected, item number 14.
Your Honor, request permission to publish this to the jury.
Any objections to that?
No objection.
All right. Nobody said.
place that back in the envelope for me?
Yes, sir.
Was that item, again, collected, packaged, maintained, and stored in accordance with BCI standard operating procedure?
Yes, it was.
In addition to State's Exhibit 499, which was marked by photo placard 14, did you also look at that laminate flooring to see if there was a projectile in it?
Yes, we did look at the laminate flooring. On the, as you could have seen in the photographs earlier, there was a stack of laminate flooring, and on the outer edge, in other words, the edge that would be facing the road, which is the edge that you would see if you were looking toward the house, located some damage there, and in looking into that damage, it appeared to be another partial bullet and fragment there.
I've handed you a group of photo exhibits. If you could, take a look at those. I'm going to start by reusing State's Exhibit A146, and that's not in your stack there, but you just testified to it. Okay. If you look at the screen real quick, that's State's Exhibit A146. Again, what's depicted there? What area are you looking at when we're talking about this item number 15?
It would be out in this area on your diagram. In the photographs, it's obviously on top of the porch railing that goes around the exterior of the porch.
Can you go ahead and forward to State's Exhibit A147? Okay, State's Exhibit A147, that's up on the screen there. What's depicted in that? What's the jury looking at?
This is the stack of laminate flooring, again, that's stacked up on the rail.
A148?
A148 is another photograph. Notice in A147, we're showing it's a wide view of this. We've now moved to a closer view because we had observed some damage there, and you can clearly see a damaged area there in A148.
And again, as you're looking at that, are you up on that porch looking for projectile strikes?
Had been, yes.
Okay.
Prior to that, yes.
And what you're seeing there in that laminate flooring, again, based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, was that consistent with a projectile having gone into that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Can you go ahead and give me the A158? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at and State's Exhibit A158?
Yeah, we've now panned in on this specific piece of laminate. And you can see a scale there, and again, it's listed as BE 1.0, which would be a ballistic event, or shooting a firearm would constitute a ballistic event. And this was the first entrance that we found, so it was 1.0.
And were you able to pull those planks apart and to look further to see if you could actually find the projectile associated with that ballistic event?
Yes, sir.
Can you show me State's Exhibit A266, please? Okay. Can you tell us what we're looking at in State's Exhibit A266?
A266, again, it's a photograph from the porch looking at the laminate flooring. If you recall in the last photograph, we saw BE 1.0. That piece of laminate has now been moved, and we found what appeared to be a bullet there laying on top of the laminate. You see that listed there as item number 15 in the placard. So again, it's item number 15, BE 1.0.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A267? Can you tell us what we're looking at there?
Yes, this is a close-up of item number 15, the partial bullet.
268?
We've now collected that and trying to take a photograph of the end of it. That could possibly be used later for measurements or something of that nature.
Okay, when you say measurements or something like that, again, do you have a firearms section there at your lab at BCI?
Yes, we do. That's one of the disciplines we talked about earlier. different disciplines in our lab. We would have DNA, we'd have latent fingerprints, we would have the firearms section, so yes.
Is one of the things that you do from time to time take ballistic evidence such as projectiles, shell casings that are found at the scene and ask that section to do examinations or comparisons?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me the, go ahead and give me 269. Again, can you tell us what's depicted in State's Exhibit A269?
A269, again, is item number 15, the bullet. It's just from the opposite end as what we saw in Exhibit 268.
Did you collect what you have marked there as item number 15?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes in State's Exhibit A500. Can you take a look at that for me?
A500, once again, it's listed as item number 15. This would be the bullet we just looked at that I collected. This packaging has my original label, and again, my initials are on the back.
If you could you open State's Exhibit A500 for us?
Yes.
Tell the jury what was inside the envelope marked State's Exhibit A500.
It's the bullet that we just looked at in the photographs, item number 15.
Okay. Can you do me a favor? Can you actually pull that one out of the plastic wrap?
Yes.
And again, is it your testimony that the plastic little baggie that it's in is consistent with what you know from the lab?
Most likely, yes, it is.
Okay. That exhibit that you removed from that plastic baggie, is that projectile
I believe it is, yes.
that you collected that day?
Yes.
No objection.
Could you go ahead and put it back in the envelope for me?
Yes.
Again, State's Exhibit A500, was that collected, packaged, stored, maintained in accordance with BCI standard operating procedures?
Yes.
In addition to those two projectiles that you recovered from that front porch area, did you also look around the front porch area and look at evidence of different strikes?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you another series of pictures here. You could just take a second and look at them. Mr. Junk, if you could put up State's Exhibit A136 for us. Go back out of that. It's not right. Can you give me A152? Okay. If you could, I put State's Exhibit A152 up on the screen for the jury. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there and what area of that front porch that's located in?
Yes, A152, this photograph would be taken if you were standing on the front porch looking from the area that we just looked at from the porch railing. We were standing in that general location looking toward the front door, in this case looking toward the window.
Okay. State's Exhibit A153. Can you tell us what's depicted in State's Exhibit A153?
Yes, there's broken glass. The window obviously had been broken. That's something that, in looking at the front of the residence, we don't just look in the obvious places or look in one area. We would try to examine the entire front exterior for bullet holes or bullet strikes, and in doing that examination, we noticed this window had broken.
Do you also examine the area around the front door for strikes and projectiles?
Absolutely, yes.
Can you tell us, can you give me State's Exhibit 155? I'm putting up on the screen what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A155. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, I can. I do not have that photograph in front of me.
We already used
but-
it once, so it's not in the file.
Yes, but A155 would be a photograph standing on the front porch, looking directly at the door. I think we looked at it earlier, and I mentioned that there were multiple suspected bullet holes there, and there were additional holes in the door that did not appear to be bullet holes. However, one of those was a bullet hole.
Did you have the opportunity to, again, look around that area and examine it more closely, for bullet incidents or ballistic incidents?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit 160? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there and what part of the trailer that is?
Yes, after the last photograph, obviously, we photographed things in their original condition. That's why you did not see labels prior to that. Once we photographed them in their original condition, then we approached, added labels with scales. And you can see to the far left, you would have BE 2.0. And getting closer to the door jamb, then you get 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, and then the one over in the door itself is BE 6.0.
And again, did you take a closer examination of each of those ballistic events to, again, determine angle and what you could tell from those strikes?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit A161? Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. Exhibit 161 is BE 2.0. Referenced it in the last photograph as being far to the left. It was over to the left of all the of 3.0 and so on. It's basically a close-up photograph of that hole.
And again, just to be clear, because there's no real frame of reference or no context to that picture, can you just point and tell us where on the diagram that would have been?
Actually, if you look at the diagram here and you see the number 26 and you see the number 14 and the wall in between the two in this area, that's about where all of these bullet strikes would have been located.
Okay. Can you show us State's Exhibit A162? State's Exhibit A162, can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, this is another bullet hole. You're now moving over closer to the door, and I referenced it earlier, and again, it's BE 3.0.
State's Exhibit A163.
Exhibit 163, again, if you look at the last photograph, you'll see the bottom of this placard, and now in looking at this, you'll see the top of the last placard, trying to keep something in the photograph to overlap, as we discussed earlier. In this photograph, in the center, you see BE 4.0, a bullet hole, and now you're getting very close to the edge of the door.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A164? Can you tell the jury what they're seeing there?
Yes, in this photograph, it's BE 5.0. It's a bullet hole, and over in the right corner, you will see the edge of that placard, which is going to be 6.0.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A165, please? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, Exhibit 165 is a photograph of BE 6.0, and one of the additional holes that I talked about earlier, I referenced, you can see the obvious difference between that hole, which appears to be a drilled hole, and the top hole 6.0, which appears to be a bullet hole.
Mr. John, can you back me up to State's Exhibit A159? So you had right there in those markings right around the door, you had BE 2.0 through BE 6, is that correct?
Yes.
And BE 1 was actually the strike right here in the laminate, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with respect to the area where this, right around where 14 and 26 is in this front door area, how many bullet holes did you find in the front of that trailer in that area?
In that particular area, we would have had one, again, which is 15, would be 1.0. Then we had 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for a total in that area of approximately 6 right there.
Did you also, in doing your examination of those ballistic incidents right there in the wall of the, or in the exterior of the trailer, did you also look at those with rods or use rods to make determinations with respect to those holes?
Yes, we did insert trajectory rods through each of those holes.
And tell us about that. What is a trajectory rod? Why do you use a trajectory rod?
There's a lot of reasons or purposes for a trajectory rod. You have to have the proper, obviously the proper bullet hole there in order to be able to fit the rod in it. Meaning that you most normally want a good secondary point, so when the rod goes through, you can get an accurate line. So you have it going in one point and going out another point, that's going to give you an accurate line. What we use basically more times than none now when we use trajectory rods, we will later put a sphere on those and then we will use those when we scan the scene, and then we can do a somewhat of a reconstruction based on the scan. It will basically show us the origin or the general origin of where those bullets were fired from.
And did you put some rods through those holes to do some trajectory analysis in this case?
Yes.
Can you give me what's been identified as State's Exhibit A272? All right, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A272. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, you now see a photograph of the front door. Obviously, you can see the bullet holes, the placards that are there, or the stickers that we have put there, the BE 2.0 up into 6.0, and now trajectory rods have been inserted into those holes.
Now, you testified that in addition to examining this exterior storm door for bullet holes, where you found bullet holes, did you also look at the interior front door to see if it had any bullet holes in it?
Yes.
And did you find any bullet holes in that interior front door?
I found none.
Okay. Based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, what would that indicate about that interior front door?
Based on that factor, the fact I found no bullet hole, that if you closed it, it would have lined up with a bullet hole in the screen door. Based on that fact and other facts that we've seen photographs of earlier, I believe that this front door was in the open position when this ballistic events occurred.
Can you give me State's Exhibit 265, A265? Okay, at some point, did you begin to work inside the trailer?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And again, when you came inside the trailer, were you still, to a certain extent, focusing on the internal or inside of that door frame area?
Yes.
I've got up for the jury what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A265. Can you tell us what's depicted in that picture?
Yes, you see in 265, you see the front door. You also see the screen door. If you look to the right portion of the door jamb near the light switch, you will see some trajectory rods, little pink rods, sticking through the wall. And we would later label those as well.
Okay, we'll talk about that. As you did your work in that area, actually, Your Honor, can you come down for a second?
Yeah.
Probably have you come over here if you would. In that area where those trajectory rods are at, as you examine that area, did you notice, like, what did you notice about the wood in that area?
The wood is kind of blown out in that area.
Okay. And did you find, as you did your examination of that area, did you find wood fragments or wood chips consistent with it being blown out?
Yes.
Okay. Can you point to where that is? That's why I
Yes.
brought you out, I'm sorry.
Yes. It's up in this area here, and there would be wood fragments and things in that area.
Thank you. You can take your seat again. And at some point you said you marked those interior holes as part of your examination in this case?
Yes.
And when you marked an interior hole, would you mark that interior hole and match it up with an exterior hole?
If you can determine that that interior hole is directly connected with the exterior. In other words, if I know that a bullet went in here and exited here, and there's a clear path through, and obviously there was because we were able to insert trajectory rods, then we can call that a continuation. So if you had BE 3.0 on the outside, now the inside of that specific hole or that path would now become BE 3.1. So it's 3.0 and then 3.1.
And did you in fact do that with respect to some of those holes around that door frame?
Some of them we were able to do that, yes.
All right, can you show me, or Mr. Junk, can you give us State's Exhibit A304? All right, State's Exhibit A304 is up on the screen. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A304?
Yes, earlier I pointed out to a section on the photograph that had the pink trajectory rods and showed you that there was wood tear out there and some debris on the floor. This is a close-up of that. If you recall from the exterior, we had BE 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0. These three are from the interior, and they correspond with the exterior. Therefore, we labeled them as BE 3.1, 4.1, and 5.1.
Mr. Junk, can you give me 305? We're going to put up State's Exhibit A305. Again, can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it's 305 is we're panning in, trying to get a closer view of these bullet holes.
306?
306 is the same. We're moving in closer, and it shows a close-up of BE 3.1.
And does that picture, again, depict the shearing of the wood or the fragmentation of the wood that you had talked about or that you were able to observe?
Yes, it appears to. There's tear out there. There's clean wood in that area.
Next picture, please. Tell us what that is?
I have 307, Exhibit 307. It looks like a close-up of BE 4.1.
Okay. Yes, and I guess for the record, what's up on the screen is State's Exhibit A307. And then A308.
A308 is another photograph of BE 5.1. You can see where it looks like the projectile came on an inward direction, and there is some metal there, and obviously what came through had enough force to bend that metal is what it appears.
Let me take you to State's Exhibit A274. State's Exhibit A274. Again, were you able to track the inside hole to the storm door?
Yes.
Okay. And is that ballistic incident or event pictured in State's Exhibit A274?
Yes, it is. It's in the lower portion of the photograph toward the center at the edge of the door.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A271? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
In Exhibit 271, again, it's what appears to be 6.1. It's the interior portion of the door that corresponds with 6.0. It's appears to be a bullet hole, and you can see the tear out of the metal, the shearing of the metal.
Okay. And when you talk about tear out, that peeling or that shearing, what does that indicate to you?
It indicates directionality, first of all, that whatever object caused that would have appeared to be coming from the outside in, because this is on the inside.
Did any of those holes that you saw right there have a projectile still in it?
I don't think any of those did. I don't recall any of them containing a projectile.
In addition, again, we're just kind of sticking with that door. In addition to looking at the ballistic damage to the door, did you also do some blind swabs of that door?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell the jury what's a blind swab?
A blind swab would be swabbing an area that, for instance, a door handle. We don't see DNA there on that door handle. If you see blood, now that's different, but something such as touch DNA, where you simply touch something and you pull your hand away, a blind swab would be taken of that area, hoping to collect unseen DNA.
Let's talk about that for a second. Based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, again, if I wore gloves and pushed on that door, opened that door, touched that door, would I transfer my DNA through my hands or anything else?
Most likely not.
Okay. And are there things like gloves and clothing that will interrupt the transfer of DNA from a person into a seat?
Yes, there is.
As a matter of fact, is that why you wear the Tyvek suits?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit A272? State's Exhibit A272. Can you tell the jury again? You already talked about the ballistic rods. Let's focus on the photo placard 16. Can you tell the jury what's depicted in photo placard 16 there? Oh, yeah. Go ahead and look at that, Mr. Green.
Yes, in photo placard 16, ultimately I believe would be some blind swabs in an attempt to collect DNA that might have been deposited on the exterior of the door.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 501. Can you take a look at State's Exhibit 501 for me?
Yes. This is a package. This is my original package, it appears. It has my initials on the back over the seal. It looks as though it's the original label. Its description is item number 16, a blind swab from the exterior of the front storm door.
And again, did you collect that swab in accordance with your training, in accordance with the protocols and standard operating procedures for BCI?
Yes.
And is that the type of thing that eventually would be sent to the lab for further testing?
Yes, it could be.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I believe there's another stipulation that the parties will engage in.
All right, you want to state what it is?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense counsel acknowledge.
The parties agree and stipulate that the blind swab from the exterior front storm door of 4077 Union Hill Road, that's identified as State's Exhibit 501, also identified as photo ID number 16 and BCI item number 16, was submitted to the lab and tested for DNA. The result of that test showed a mixture of DNA, with Gary Rhoden being the major contributor. Chris Rhoden's DNA was not found in the swab, and neither the defendant nor any of his family members' DNA was found in the mixture contained in the swab.
All right, Mr. Parker, is that a correct statement of the stipulation?
Yes, sir.
All right. The jury shall find that stipulation has been established as fully as if it had been established by evidence.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 502. Did you also take a blind swab from the interior of that door?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit 502?
Exhibit 502 is evidence number 7. It's my evidence item number 17, I'm sorry. And obviously this is my packaging, it's my original label, it's my initials, and this would be blind swabs that were collected from the interior portion of the front storm door.
Mr. Junk, can you give me State's Exhibit A274? Okay. The State's Exhibit A274 that's up on the screen for everybody. Again, can you tell us what's depicted with respect to evidence placard 17?
When I process scenes, even though this was a blind swab, I always felt more comfortable if I gave it an actual visible number. So this is a item number 17, but the blind swab would have been taken from that general area.
And State's Exhibit 502 that you identified, again, did you collect it from that area, and was it collected and maintained and stored in accordance with your training, your experience, and BCI's protocols?
Yes.
I want to talk now about, we've covered the front porch area and that front door area. At some point, did you turn your attention in your examination into that living room area?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you a series of photos, State's Exhibits A167, A169, A178, A179, A168, and A180. These are pictures that we asked not to be published. Okay. As part of your work in this case, did you and your team document the inside of that living room area the way you found it on April 22nd, 2016?
Yes, we did.
And walk us through how you go through documenting the interior of a scene and why that's important. Do you move anything or change anything before you document?
Absolutely not. This scene was a little different than some scenes. A lot of scenes that you enter, you have an area that you can establish as a place to work. What we would do in a particular situation like that, and what we've done in the past, is, let's say, the living room area, we would do a complete search, documentation, photography, and basically clear an area to enable us to work. This particular scene, we were not able to do that because there was so much evidence right as you walked in the door, and so we actually never brought staged equipment inside. We staged everything on the front porch, and because there was so much evidence in this general area that we did not want to destroy.
And part of that staged equipment, or is part of that staged equipment, your Tyvek suits or extra gloves that you have to change into, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, Tyvek suits, gloves, bags, tools, chemicals, all of those things would have been staged outside.
And you talked about the Faro scan by another agent. By the time you were ready to go into this scene and start your processing of the scene, had that Faro scan been done?
Yes, earlier I testified that I had came to the front door and looked inside the front door, and at that point, based on what I was seeing there was no area for me to work. It wasn't good practice to go in. From there, I determined to back out. I contacted the other agent who was in the vicinity working another scene and told him that we would not be proceeding with this scene until it was scanned on the interior and the exterior and the interior.
And did that other agent come over and scan the scene for you?
Yes.
And when he scanned that scene, did he have a Tyvek suit on, or did he suit up the way that you would have suited up to protect the scene?
I believe he did, yes. I believe we discussed that.
Okay. I want to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A167. And if you could, tell the jury what they're looking at there in State's Exhibit A167. And with respect to photographing this scene, again, is there a certain way you pan, a certain way you move the camera so that you can collect the evidence before you actually go in?
In Exhibit 167, this is a photograph, and I'm standing on the front porch here. I'm not inside the residence at this point. If you look in the lower left-hand corner of the photograph, you can actually see the door jamb. And so I'm still on the front porch, and I want to just photograph anything that's in the view of my camera from that position, just straight in.
Let me show you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A169.
A169 is that same general vicinity, but it's at a different angle. It's going in toward the kitchen area now. You can once again see the chair in the last photograph, and it overlaps into this photo.
State's Exhibit A178.
A178 is...
Hold on 1 second. There you go. Let us get it up on the screen. Go ahead.
A178, again, is a photograph kind of panning out a little bit, looking into the kitchen area.
A179.
A179, we're now turning back toward what would ultimately be the bedroom area, still focusing the camera toward the kitchen area.
And A180.
A180. A180 is a photograph from that general vicinity. I think I said earlier there was some plywood there in the corner, and you will see a treadmill in this photograph. And earlier when I began my testimony, I spoke of arriving at the scene and being advised that Officer Music and Officer Ball were the only two deputies that went inside, and I told you that they took a specific route. They actually, when they came in, they stayed close to this wall, and they actually went through the treadmill, through the hole in the treadmill, and worked their way down. And when they returned, they came back through that same hole in order to preserve the scene.
After documenting that general area of the living room and kitchen, did you continue to look for other ballistic evidence in the living room area?
Yes.
And did you find other ballistic evidence in the living room area?
Yes, we found multiple projectiles and fragments.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes. The State's Exhibit A302. Do you have that in your stack there?
No.
I'll take this and trade you. State's Exhibit A302 that's up on the screen. Again, I handed you a stack of pictures. Do you recognize those pictures from your work that day?
Yes, I've reviewed these photographs.
Okay. And State Exhibit A302, can you tell the jury what they're looking at in that exhibit?
A302 is a photograph from the interior of the residence. It would be on the wall that would face outside. It's in the general area that we looked at all the ballistic events earlier that were in the wall, BE 2.0 through 6.0. And in this photograph, right in the area of the scale, you can see a part of a jacket or projectile there.
And that picture there, that item 26, is that depicted on A46 as 26 on A46?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Right near the front door.
And again, is that the area that you found that projectile on April 22nd of 2016?
Yes, sir, it is.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A303? Can you tell us what we're looking at there in State's Exhibit A303?
Yes, in Exhibit 303, that's item number 26 that we saw in the last photograph, but at that point it's been removed, and a little closer photograph. Also, we've put it on a envelope to give you a better background to be able to recognize what it is.
Okay. And again, did you collect that projectile that you found in that wall?
Yes.
Did you collect it according to your training and your procedures?
Yes.
Yeah. My handy what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A511. Can you take a look at State's Exhibit A511?
Yes, A511 is represented here and marked as item number 26. That would be my original label. This is my packaging, my initials on the back. And it is noted that it is a jacket fragment from basically the wall in the living room area.
And I'm going to have you open it if you can. If it's in a plastic baggie, I'm not going to have you take it out, so you don't have to glove up.
It is in a plastic baggie.
Okay. And do you recognize the item that's in the plastic baggie?
Yes, it appears to be item number 26.
Okay. Is that the item you collected from the wall inside of 4077 Union Hill Road on April 22nd, 2016?
Yes, sir.
You aren't going to publish it?
No. Yes.
Agent Henshaw, the plastic baggie again, do you recognize that as, well, did you put it in the plastic baggie?
I did not.
Okay, and the markings on the plastic baggie, again, are those your markings?
On this, no, they're not.
Okay, and this is consistent with something that would have been done by the lab or your firearms folks?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A181.
Yes.
Now, in addition to that projectile that you just identified from inside the wall there, Were there other projectiles in different areas of that living room?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what they're seeing in State's Exhibit A181?
Yes, in this photograph, this would be looking once again directly in, standing basically in front of the front entrance door. And if you look directly in front, there's a small pair of pliers, there's a floor register vent, and directly to the left of that, there's a small projectile. And that will end up being, may I stand, Your Honor?
Sorry.
May I stand?
Yes.
Would end up being in this area here.
Okay. While you're up, the pliers or the vice grips, where are those?
There.
And was there also a knife there?
Yes, in that area.
Okay, again, is that knife yours or BCI's, or was that there when you found it?
It was there. It was there when we arrived.
Thanks. You can take a seat. Can I get State's Exhibit A299? Again, with respect to that item that you just identified, did you mark it with a BCI item number and a placard and document it?
Yes, that would be item number 25. It's documented with a placard. And you can see first we photographed it without any alterations. Then we moved in and put a placard beside it and a scale for better identification. And then later we would take additional photos.
Okay, and can you just move us on to 300? State's Exhibit A300. Again, continuing to document the location depiction of that item in the scene.
Yes.
All right.
A300, again, it's the same photograph. It's just got a little more detail.
And State's Exhibit A301.
301, once again, we're moving in. Based on the last photographs, we're now able to orient where that is, as opposed to just having one up-close photo for you to see. Now, you can put that in its location within the scene.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A510. State's Exhibit A510 that you have in your hand. Can you tell the jury, do you recognize the writings on that envelope?
Yes, this is my initials. Again, it's my packaging. It has my original label. It is item number 25, and it has a basic description of a jacketed fragment from the floor next to the chair, or the vent, actually, in the living room area.
Can you show us on the overhead ballistic diagram, which is State's Exhibit A546, is that bullet fragment documented on that overhead diagram?
Yes, it's documented as number 25, the green dot in front of the chair in that area.
Could you open that package for us?
Yes. Again, the item is in a plastic bag, appears to be in the lab.
Okay, and again, the item that's in that plastic bag, do you recognize that as the projectile that you recovered, your item number 25, State's Exhibit 510?
Yes, it appears to be the same item.
Your Honor, can I publish it?
Yes.
No objection.
Objection to that, yes.
Have you put that back inside? State's Exhibit 510, was that collected according to your training, your experience, and BCI's protocols?
Yes, sir.
And again, was it kept and maintained the way evidence should be kept and maintained there at BCI?
Yes.
In addition to that jacket right there in front of the recliner. Did you find another projectile or ballistic piece of evidence in a speaker in that same area?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And if you could, use the diagram to show us where that speaker box is.
On the diagram, it would be over around area number 40. In this area, we actually examined that entire area there and found multiple items there.
Okay. And Mr. Junk, could you give me State's Exhibit A167? We've already used that, so you're probably not going to have it. Okay, State's Exhibit A167. It's probably on your diagram, or excuse me, on your monitor.
Yes.
Can you tell us where in that picture is that speaker box?
In the photograph you're seeing there, it's directly below the deer head and next to the chair.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A402? All right, we have State's Exhibit A402, which is up on the screen. Can you tell us or tell the jury what they're seeing in State's Exhibit A402?
Yes, earlier we saw a wide angle shot of that and I described its location. Now we're moving closer to that area. You see the deer head, and in the background you see the primary target we're looking at, which is the black speaker, and what appears to be possibly bullet holes at that point.
And again, in accordance with the way you document a scene, would you have marked that with an item number, a photo placard, and taken pictures of it?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit 403? State's Exhibit 403, can you tell the jury what's depicted in State's Exhibit 403?
Yes, 403 is an up-close photograph of the top edge of that speaker. And it looks like a ballistic event there had happened or had occurred, and there's a partial projectile there. It would be my item number 40.
Okay. And again, for the record, I keep saying 403. It's A. Any of these exhibits that are numbers will have A's in front of them. State's Exhibit A404.
That's another photograph trying to get a little closer view.
Did you actually remove that projectile from that speaker as part of your work in this case?
I think this one we did remove. It was in an area that it could be removed without altering the condition. So I think we did remove it.
Can I get you to show me State's Exhibit A409? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A409?
Yes, this is my item number 40. It would have been what you saw. Still embedded in the speaker in the last photograph, but it's been removed. And this would be a close-up photograph of that item.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes. That's State's Exhibit A525. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A525?
Yes, once again, it's in my packaging. It has my original label. I have it labeled as item number 40. It's a partial jacket from the speaker in the living room with my initials.
Could you do me a favor? Could you open that?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, it's the item number 40, the partial jacket removed from the speaker. Yes.
Can I publish it now? No objection.
All right, yes.
Again, was this item collected, maintained, and stored in accordance with your training, your experience, and DCI's standard operating procedures?
Yes.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A405. In addition to the projectile that you dug out of a speaker, did you also find another projectile or another speaker that possibly contained a bullet in it?
Yes, this Exhibit A405, if you look at it, you will see a small speaker sitting on top of the large speaker. Item number 40 would be out of focus, but we know its general location. Our point of focus on this is the small speaker sitting on top, and we saw what appeared to be a ballistic event there. Looked like a bullet had either been lodged or passed through that item.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A410? Again, State's Exhibit A410. Can you tell the jury what's depicted in A410?
A410 is the speaker listed as item number 41, and we thought at that time it could contain a bullet as well.
You don't have to point it out from there, but is on the ballistic evidence diagram, is photo exhibit 41 listed in that same general area as 40 was?
Yes, it is.
Did you do any work with respect to the speaker that's depicted there in that picture?
I chose to just collect the speaker. I wasn't sure exactly where the projectile was inside the speaker. However, it didn't look like it had exited that, so we collected the entire speaker. In order to, in a lab setting, they're able to extract something, a projectile, better than I am. They're better equipped, and it's a better environment. So we took the whole item.
Mr. John, can you give me State's Exhibit A411, which is the next picture? And again, with respect to the strike on that speaker, we put up State's Exhibit A411 on the screen. Can you tell the jury what's depicted in that item or that picture?
Yes, it simply looks like a bullet strike in the edge of the speaker.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A526. Could you take a look at State's Exhibit A526 for me?
Yes,
Do you recognize the markings on that package?
Yes, it's my item number 41. Again, it's my packaging, my original label. Appears to be my initials are on the packaging from the original collection date. And I have it labeled as a speaker containing a possible bullet fragment from the top of the speaker in the living room area.
Could you open that package for me?
Yes. Would you like it removed?
Yes. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, this is actually what we labeled as item 41, and I read to you earlier on my packaging. We felt that it contained a suspected projectile or bullet.
Can you show the jury on that exhibit, which is again State's Exhibit A526, can you show the jury where that strike is on that?
I believe it was in this area. There's a hole there.
You can put it back.
There's something else in the
Okay.
package.
Okay. And again, with respect to that item right there, did you dig a projectile out of that yourself, or is that something that was done in the lab?
I did not. I believe the lab would have removed that.
And the other item you removed out of that package, again, is that in the same type of baggie that the other projectiles have been kept in?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. In addition to that speaker, along that same wall over by that recliner, did you find other projectiles?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Can I get State's Exhibit A394? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there in State's Exhibit A394?
Yes, in A394, if you look at the base of the wall, where the wall meets the floor, there are 3 small pieces of, I believe that to be cat food there. Directly behind that at the base, you'll see a little silver object, and that appeared to be a bullet.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A395? And again, would you have done your same procedure? Would you have zoomed in closer and closer on that projectile?
Yes, yes.
State's Exhibit A395, can you tell us what we're looking at there?
Yes, same location, same target that we're looking at to photograph, just a better close-up shot of what would be item number 38.
And eventually, would you have marked that projectile, documented it, and collected it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Can I get State's Exhibit A397? Can you tell us what's depicted in State's Exhibit A397?
A397 would be a photograph. We have first, once again, we photographed it without a scale, without distorting anything. Now we've put a scale to it and assigned it the number 38 to be collected.
And State's Exhibit A398?
In Exhibit A398 is a photograph. We've now moved it to an envelope, again, to get a better backdrop. It shows a little more detail in the photograph.
My handy what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A523. State's Exhibit A523, do you recognize the markings on that envelope?
Yes, it's my evidence number 38 with my original label and my initials. And it is the evidence item I assigned to it, number 38.
Can you open that envelope for us? And can you tell us what that is?
It's the projectile, or the, we would call it a partial bullet, but it's a projectile that is listed as item number 38 we viewed in the photographs.
Parker. Your Honor, can I publish it?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this item, was it collected, stored, and maintained in accordance with your training with BCI procedures and protocols?
Yes, sir, it was.
And that item right there that we just talked about, 38, again, on State's Exhibit A546, is that depicted over that same general area?
Yes, it is.
In addition to collecting projectiles in that living room area, did you also search that room for other ballistic incidents or ballistic events?
Yes, we did.
And as you searched that room for other ballistic incidents or events, did you try to track the path or trajectory of those events through the trailer?
Yes, we tried.
I'm getting ready to switch over into another topic with this. It may be a good break.
All right. Defense ready for a recess also. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a lunch recess. It's 12:30, so we'll be in recess until 1:30. Again, you're on your own for lunch. Do not discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Do not permit this case to be discussed with you or in your presence. Do not form or express an opinion concerning this case. Do not do any research at all concerning the case, either as to the facts or as to the law. Do not view, listen to, or read any reports or accounts of this case. Do not have any contact with any of the participants in the trial, including parties, counsel, or witnesses. Does counsel have anything further before we recess?
No, thank you.
And we are in recess until 1:30. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. We are back on the record without the jurors present right now for in the case of State of Ohio versus George Wagner IV. The state was conducting direct examination of Special Agent Henshaw. Was there anything else to be put on the record before we?
Could we approach?
Can we just approach? We just want to talk.
Yes. Okay, so the state was conducting direct examination of Agent Henshaw, and Agent Henshaw, if you want to occupy the witness chair again, I understand what problem it puts you in if you're already in the chair when the jury comes in. So you want to, if you want to stand beside the chair, that's fine until the jury comes in, and you see, sort of hides you back there. Bring the jury in. Counsel is ready, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Defense is also ready for the jury at this time.
Yes, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the state is conducting direct examination of Agent Hansford. We're still on the state side of the case for that. There are a couple of options open, and the court has chosen one. If we took our afternoon break, a 15-minute break, and we're getting started a little bit later. It's 1:50 by my watch. If we go straight through, we'll probably be able to get you all, allow you all to go home around 4 o'clock today. The only other option would be if we take our 15-minute break, we may then go, by the time we get organized and everything, it may be more toward 5. I've decided that we should go straight through and possibly then be able to send you home at 4. But if that causes any distress for anybody, you need to bring it to my attention. But that's my thought was probably we would just go straight through without a break this afternoon, since we're starting a little bit late, and go to 4. So is the state ready to proceed with direct examination of Officer Hansford?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Is the defense ready also?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Officer Henshaw, I'm putting up again before the jury State's Exhibit A546. Can you see that from where you're at?
Yes, I can.
Okay. When we left off, you had just finished testifying about different projectiles and bullet fragments that you recovered from the living room of 4077 Union Hill Road, correct?
Yes, sir.
In addition to collecting those projectiles, did you also do some work where you tried to track the trajectory of different ballistic events through the living room area or through that location?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. Talk us through how you did that. Generally, how did you go about trying to match up holes and try to figure out what hole matched with what?
If we go back just a little bit, and you remember earlier, whenever we took photographs and we looked at those photographs and discussed BE1 or 2.0 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, they were in the front wall of the residence around number 26 and number 14. When those entered, we saw photographs where there were trajectory rods going through those, and the goal is to determine where those ultimately would have landed, or if there were multiple areas on the inside that would match with the outside.
Okay. And as a bullet travels through a circle, let's say that front wall there, obviously you testified that some bullets punched through that front wall. Even as they carry through the wall, would the impact with that front wall, would you at least expect that to change the course of the trajectory of the bullet a little bit?
There should be some type of a deviation in the bullet, meaning that if it strikes a hard substrate, even if it goes through it, its path will be altered.
Okay. And again, would you expect that type of alteration with anything inside that residence that it hit? A body. If a bullet hit that body, could it come out at a different angle of a body than it went in?
It could, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to hand you some pictures. Mr. Junk, I'm going to ask you to put up State's Exhibit A309. State's Exhibit A309 that we have up on the screen, again, is that in the stack of pictures that I handed you?
Yes, it is.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A309?
Earlier, when I testified, once again, if you recall, there was a speaker and a smaller speaker sitting on top of it, and then there was a deer head mounted on the wall. You can partially see the portion of the deer head, and so that will orient you as to where this photograph is on the wall in the residence. And there's a marker there. Obviously, you can see a strike mark, and then there's a marker that would say BE 7.0.
Can you do me a favor? Can you take your pointer and orient the jury to where that would be?
Should be in this general area here.
And with respect to ballistic event 7.0, did you try to track that event or look at that closely to see if you could figure out where that projectile went?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit A310, please? Okay, can you tell us what State's Exhibit A310 is?
A310 is a close-up photograph. We saw the last photograph. Obviously, it had the portion of the deer head. It was from a distance. This is a close-up view of the same bullet hole.
And can you tell the jury, again, as you're looking at that, is that consistent with a projectile strike, or what caused you to believe that that is related to a projectile strike?
The overall shape of it, the fact that it appears to be no damage, just the characteristics of what you're seeing there, and you see what appears to be somewhat of a little shoulder in the drywall portion of the wall there.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A323?
323, Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, not 323. Yeah, 323. Yes. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at there with State's Exhibit A323?
Yes, in A323, this would be on the other side of the wall. We saw BE 7.0. We took that photograph. We took a close-up photograph. We described it. And now we've went into the room on the other side of the wall to see where it would have exited or if it did exit. And at that point, we found what you see in this photograph. It appears to be an exit. You can see how the drywall and the paper is protruding out. And at that point, we felt confident that we could label that BE 7.1.
Can you do me a favor? Can you point to the room that you're talking about and the wall that you're talking about?
Yeah, it would be in this area, yes.
Okay. Now, is that that's a separate bedroom, or is that a separate bedroom?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me back you up. Prior to doing your actual evidence collection and crime scene analysis, did you go through this entire residence and document everything before you moved anything or before you started doing your collection?
Yes, that would have been done through photography. When we go through for the in the beginning, we don't necessarily move objects. We don't search for evidence at that time. Our goal at that point is the same as with the outside. We document things so that it is preserved, so that when we do move items, at least we can have photographic evidence of where things were prior to us altering the scene.
Okay. And so prior to actually going in and tracking this projectile track through that bedroom wall, would you have already documented it?
Most likely through photography, yes.
Okay. Let's go to State's Exhibit A324.
A324 is a photograph. It's just a close-up photograph of the last photograph we saw. Again, we have a marker there, and we've labeled it BE 7.1.
Is that in the wall or in the ceiling, or where is that in that room?
I believe that's in the wall area.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit A325?
A325, once again, to the left, you see a bullet hole that was labeled in the last photograph as BE 7.1. So now this bullet, we believe, has penetrated the wall in the living room, which is BE 7.0. It exited in this bedroom, causing a hole which we would label as BE 7.1. and it appears that it re-entered another wall, and upon re-entry, then we give it BE 7.2.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A326? Can you tell the jury what we're looking at there?
Once again, this would be a photograph of another exit point. So what we're trying to show here is the fact that it enters, it exited, it re-entered, and in this photograph, it has now exited again. So it's now come from the living room area through a wall of a bedroom, a small partition, and now it's exiting and re-entering into another room.
Can you show us on the diagram where that track is going?
I believe it's over into this area now.
Okay. Can you give me State's Exhibit A311? Let me direct your attention to State's Exhibit A311. It's probably the next picture in your stack there, would be my guess.
No.
Okay. State's Exhibit A311 that you have there on the screen. Did you find it in your stack?
Yes, I did.
Okay, State's Exhibit A311 that you have on your screen there. Again, can you tell us what that is?
Yes, that would be another ballistic event. If you recall, there was a speaker, the small speaker. I believe we looked at it earlier, examined the packaging. There was a projectile that had been located and recovered by the lab. In documenting that, in that general area, just below that small speaker is the large speaker. That large speaker has a suspected bullet hole, and we were able to, we actually labeled that as well.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A312?
Exhibit 312, A312, is a close-up photograph of that speaker, and you can see that we have listed that as BE 8.0.
Can you give me the next exhibit, which is A313? Okay, State's Exhibit A313. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at there and what area of that residence this exhibit is?
Exhibit A313 is in the living room area. It's on the far wall. Earlier, if you recall, when I first stepped in the door, one of the photographs I took was a photograph looking directly through the house, straight through to the back wall. This would be that general location, and we would find multiple bullet strikes there.
Can you show us on the diagram where exactly we're talking about?
Should be back in this general area here.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A313? And again, with respect to these projectile strikes or ballistic incidents on 313, give me 14, I'm sorry. Did you examine each of those individually and try to track those as well?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay, can you tell us what we're looking at in A314?
And A314 is it's somewhat the same photograph we looked at last. It's just a close-up photograph. Now you can actually see the characteristics of the bullet hole, established that it is a bullet hole, and we have documented that as BE or ballistic event 9.0.
Can you give me A315? And again, can you tell the jury what State's Exhibit A315 is, please?
A315, again, is in the corner of the room, that far wall. It's just beside BE 9.0, and we labeled this. It had characteristics of being a bullet hole. We labeled it as BE 1.0.
Now, you pointed out to the jury that those were on the back side of that wall in that residence. Were you able to actually track those out the back side of the trailer?
We attempted to do that, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes, the State's Exhibit A348. Can you tell us what we're looking at in State's Exhibit A348?
In A348, this is a photograph of the back of the mobile home. You can see toward the center of the photograph, and would be in this general area. You see two trajectory rods coming out from the interior of the mobile home. And then to the left, down closer to the window, you will see a third trajectory rod.
Can you do me a favor real quick? Just right above you on the screen, we've got it portrayed. Can you point it out for us? No, I got you in a maze right there.
You would have a few here and one here.
And did you track and label those holes with respect to where they'd come from inside the trailer?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And again, were you able to track whether or not those are, I guess I'll call them exit holes, but are those, what we're looking at right there, are those exit or entrance holes?
These appear to be exit holes. They have characteristics you can see in the photographs of being exit.
Can you give me 339, State Exhibit A 339? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there with respect to State Exhibit A 339?
Yes, in Exhibit A 339, if you recall, just momentarily, or a few minutes ago, we looked at BE 10.0 and 9.0 on the interior of the mobile home. Applying trajectory rods, you were able to track those, and they do appear to be the ones we saw in the last photograph up high. And we did mark those as BE 9.1 and BE 10.1.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A 340? State's Exhibit A 340, can you tell the jury what you're looking at?
In A340, this may look similar to the last photograph. It's just a little closer, and you begin to see some characteristics there, as with in the last photograph, but they're a little more clear in A340. That characteristics that would indicate that the projectile that caused this hole would be traveling from inside to outside.
What are those characteristics?
You can see the metal right next to the trajectory rod on BE 9.1. You can see how the metal is rolled over. You can also see some areas of the metal that appear that they're protruding out.
Can I get State's Exhibit A 341?
A341 would be a close-up of BE 10.1. And again, you can see what appears to be characteristics of the metal protruding from that hole.
In addition to these two projectile strikes, again, did you find other projectile strikes that you were able to track the basic trajectory of?
Yes.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A 318? State's Exhibit A 318. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at there?
This particular photograph will show a bullet hole, or what we assumed or thought was a bullet hole from inside the residence. You can see the speakers, the background. We've seen that in several photographs prior to this. And so we were able to determine that it was a bullet hole, and we labeled that BE 11.0, I believe.
State's Exhibit 320, please. A 320.
Yes.
State's Exhibit A 320, again, could you tell the jury what they're looking at?
Yes, A320 is a close-up of the last photograph, and you can see a little more detail in the deformity of the bullet hole, as well as a marker there indicating that we marked it as BE 11.
Did you continue to examine that projectile strike or that ballistic incident and try to track its path as well?
Yes, we did.
All right, can you give me 321 real quick? A321. A321, can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Another photograph, the same as last, just a little closer.
And then State's Exhibit A327. Well, wait, let me back up. Show the jury where on the diagram that ballistic incident is.
Once again, I believe it's in this general area here. You have the speakers in this area.
Now, State's Exhibit A327.
A327, I'm sorry. I believe that would be an exit point where it would be exiting into another room.
A329?
In A329, it's a close-up of the last photograph. Now you can see some characteristics that would indicate the direction of travel of the projectile that made this hole. It also fairly lined up with BE 11.0, so we did scale that and label that as BE 11.1.
And can you tell us on the diagram there, or the overhead diagram, where in 4077 that ballistic event was?
On this diagram?
Yes, please.
Again, it's in this general area, in that bedroom.
Separate bedroom?
Yes.
Can you show us State's Exhibit 330? Can you tell us what is in State's Exhibit 330, please?
That's what appeared to be another bullet hole. I think there may have been one that the origins were a little tough, and we gave it just its own number.
Okay. Can you give me 332? State's Exhibit 3A332. Can you tell us what that is?
A332, it's in just a close-up photograph of the last bullet hole we saw, and we did label it as BE 12.0.
Can you tell us where that is?
Again, it's in this general area.
Were you able to track the projectile responsible for that ballistic event 12? Were you able to track that out the backside of the trailer as well?
Yes, sir, I think we did.
Okay. And can you give me again State's Exhibit A348? Okay, you've already testified to this, and you identified the top two rods, talked about those. Were you able to look at that lower rod and track that back into the residence there?
Yes, we were. The two upper rods, again, those were, on the interior, they were 9.0 and 10.0. On the exterior, they were 9.1 and 10.1. And the lower one that is closer to the window we talked about earlier, you can see it in your photograph there. I believe that we ended up calling that BE 12.1, I believe.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A347? Again, what's depicted in A347?
You can see 12.1 that we just discussed, and in the upper portion of that photograph, you can see 9.1 and 10.1.
Based on your examination of that ballistic event 12 and 12.1, again, were you able to determine the direction that you believe that bullet was traveling?
Every direction or every bullet we tracked had characteristics and appeared to come from the front of the residence, toward the residence, and then away from the residence.
And again, were these consistent with pass-through type shots?
Yes, sir.
And when pass-through, that just means a bullet that travels all the way through from front to rear. Is that correct?
Yes.
As you were doing your examination of this area, did you also find a projectile strike in the floor by that rocker recliner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us about that.
This came a little later in the process. We're still in the process of locating evidence, documenting evidence, and I said earlier, we try when we find physical evidence, it was my protocol to correctly package that, document that, and label and mark that. But there were some instances where there were items that we did not move at that point. In a crime scene, you have a sequence that you want to go by. You don't want to destroy 5 things just to get to one thing. So you have to have discipline. If there's an item across the room, you don't necessarily want to charge over and get that. When we got to the area of the chair, it was quite some time later before I felt that we were at a point in our processing and our investigation that I was able to move that chair. When we did move the chair, that's when it was, we noticed that there was a bullet hole or a suspected bullet hole in the floor right next to the chair.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A467? Can you tell the jury what we're looking at there with respect to State's Exhibit A467?
Yes, A467. It's a, again, it's a photograph taken from a distance in order to allow us to be able to orient today for you where this piece of evidence is located. We know there's a speaker there. Knowing that speaker and knowing we've discussed that, we now know where it's at within the residence. You have the chair, and so this is just an overall showing those things.
State's Exhibit A468?
Starting to move in closer on A468, you can now, it's a little more discernible. You can see some blood deposits on the floor around that particular, what we thought was a bullet hole, and we've also marked it as, I think it was BE 13.0.
And again, as you did your examination, that appeared to your observation to be blood around that hole. Is that correct?
Yes.
State's Exhibit A469?
A469, once again, it's, there are some stains, some blood stains, deposits, have some characteristics of being altered, and a bullet hole in the center, and again, it's marked BE 13.0.
And A470?
It's another photograph. It's a little closer, and we actually adjusted the light of the photograph a little differently.
If you could, show us on the diagram where you found that projectile strike.
Right here, about where 41 would be labeled there, would be in the floor in that general area.
Based on your observation of that projectile strike and the blood around it and the blood in the room, were you able to form an opinion as to whether or not that chair was there at the time at that location, the location you found it, at the time that hole was put in the floor?
I don't think that the chair was in that exact location, but it would have been close to that vicinity.
Okay. What's that based on?
It's based on the fact that in other photographs we've seen the front of the chair, the lower portion of the chair had a large saturation stain, a large blood stain. That aligned with the drag marks that we would see in the blood, and then put that together with BE 13.0, the bullet hole in the floor, with spatter stains around it, and that led me at the time to the conclusion that it was in that general area.
Okay. You talked about spatter stains. What is a spatter stain?
A spatter stain is basically a deposit of blood on a surface.
Okay.
That we, they don't use SWIC stain terminology now, but back when this occurred, we used SWIC stain, or the Scientific Working Group on Blood Stain Analysis. They had specific terminology. And so if you look at that terminology then in 2016, it would have been basically a deposit of blood on a surface.
Okay. And is splatter and spatter the same type of thing, or is that different?
To somebody that does a crime scene or blood stain analysis, it would simply be called spatter.
Okay.
A spatter stain.
Is that different than cast off?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that. What's cast off?
Cast off, you would have then, in 2016, you would basically have two types of cast off. You would have a cast off stain, and then you would have something called cessation cast off. Cast off stain would be if I took this and it had blood or water or some liquid, and I went like that, it would make a pattern. It might have characteristics showing directionality, and it might be a linear path. If I took this and had my hand here and stopped it, then that would be cessation cast off. It would be somewhat the same, but the characteristics might be a little different.
And again, back in 2016, how would you categorize the blood around ballistic event 13?
What we have here and what you can see, I would just call those basically blood stains, because there aren't any really distinctive characteristics other than the fact that it appears that some of these stains have been altered by an event.
Okay. And specifically, what do you point to, or what are you seeing?
I may have to stand.
You go ahead.
Your Honor, may I?
Sure.
If you see blood here, for instance, that has a ring around it that will start to dry a little bit. It's a ring around the exterior portion of the blood. And you also see some lines going in that direction. So it appears at some point that blood was deposited in that area on the floor. We know that. We know there's a bullet hole there, and then we know that at some point, based on what you see here in these alterations, it appears that something was moved from that area, causing these little linear lines.
Okay. Thank you. And again, those linear lines, are those consistent with something being drug or dragged through that blood, or?
Yes, that's what it appears to be.
Now, at that time, when you were out at 4077, did you do any further work to determine the trajectory or to try to recover a projectile associated with ballistic event 13.0? Can you put that up again for a second? That's, it was 470.
At the, when BE 13.0 was discovered, one of the things based on the direction of travel, it appeared that it was going somewhat, I don't want to say straight down, but it was going from above down. What angle, I'm not sure of at this point, but we knew that it had came from inside going down toward the floor, and assumed that it may have exited under the mobile home. At the point of the investigation that we were in, it was very, very late at that point, and we thought that it would be best if that would be one of the last things that we tried to actually locate. If it's under the residence, it's probably going to be safe there, and to go under the residence and then have to come out and then go back into the scene, we felt like we could possibly destroy more evidence than what we could preserve, and so we thought we would wait, and that would be one of the last things that we tried to obtain.
Okay. And at a later date, was more work done to determine the trajectory with respect to that hole and recover a projectile from underneath that trailer?
Yes, it was.
In addition, and you can take me off that, I'm going to move on, Mr. Young. In addition to that bullet hole and the ballistic evidence that you've already talked about, did you also find some ballistic evidence in the kitchen?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And specifically, did you recover a shell casing from that kitchen area?
Yes, in the kitchen area. You see here it's listed as item number 33. That would have been a fired Hornady .40 caliber cartridge case. Being a cartridge case means that it no longer has a bullet in it. It has been fired. So it's not a cartridge anymore. Now it is a cartridge case.
All right, I'm going to hand you another stack of pictures. These are going to be a group of pictures we don't want published. We're going to start with States Exhibit A214. Actually, Mr. John, can you give me A169? You don't have A169 in your stack there, but I want to start with A169. Okay, again, if you could, tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to state's A169. Where is that picture oriented towards? And at some point, are you moving into that kitchen to look for evidence as well?
Yes, on A169, if you would walk in the front door and then you would turn to your left, that's what you would see. If I may stand. So the door would be down in this area, the original location of the chair is here, and then the kitchen area would be back in that area.
And can you give me state's exhibit A168? Again, you don't have that in your stack either. Again, just walking the jury towards that kitchen. Can you tell us what we're looking at and where we're headed there?
Yes, earlier in my testimony, if you recall, there was a treadmill there, and I had indicated that when the first responding officers arrived, Officer Ball and Music, and they had entered the residence, that they stepped through that treadmill. This would be the same photograph. The treadmill is kind of on the threshold of entering into the kitchen area.
State's exhibit A214. Again, can you tell the jury what we're looking at, and again, where in the diagram is that picture taken?
A214 would be standing in this general area. Again, this being the kitchen, the chair is here, and you're beginning to see blood patterns or drag marks in blood across the floor.
Can you give me state's exhibit A217? Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here and what part of the diagram we're at?
Yes, this is A217, 217, is actually in the kitchen area. Looking back, you see a table, there's a blue tote, and then 33. It's very hard to see, but there is a spent cartridge case there on the floor, which I spoke of earlier, which is the .40 caliber Hornady cartridge case.
With respect to this piece of evidence, did you take far pictures and zoom? On that, mark it with a BCI item number. and document it?
Yes, sir, we did.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A417? Can you tell us what that is?
That it's the same photograph, or same area to be photographed, the same bullet, but we've now added a placard and assigned it an item number of item number 42.
And is this the same bedroom that you had earlier tracked multiple ballistic events through?
Yes, it is.
And through there and even out the backside of the trailer as well?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A418? With respect to that projectile that you found on that bed in that bedroom, did you ultimately collect that projectile?
Yes, sir, I did.
And we just put up State's Exhibit A418. Can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, this is the same bullet you saw in State's Exhibit 417. It's just been collected. And once again, we put it on a yellow envelope to photograph it to get a better contrast and a better view of what it actually is.
Handy what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A527. Can you take a look at State's Exhibit A527?
A527, again, is my envelope with my label, my initials on the back, and I've labeled this as item number 42, and it's the jacket, the copper jacket found on the bed in the small bedroom.
Can you open it for me?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at?
Yes, this is actually item number 42. It's the same one that was found in that bedroom, the copper jacketed bullet.
Your Honor, may I publish it?
Yep.
Yes.
With respect to this exhibit, again, did you collect it, maintain it, and store it the way you've been trained to, according to your standard operating procedures?
Absolutely.
Now, with respect to this item, we've talked about projectiles and ballistic evidence recovered from the bedroom, from the living room, from the kitchen. Was that pretty much the extent of the ballistic evidence that you recovered during your work at this scene on April 22nd, 2016?
With the exception of the first on the front porch, yes.
Okay, so everything you've testified up to this point was the ballistic evidence that you collected, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And again, as part of your work, did you prepare, or did somebody on your team prepare the overhead ballistic diagram?
Yes.
And again, does that truly and accurately depict the areas in which that evidence was found?
The ballistic evidence, yes.
Okay. Now, obviously, the ballistic events, are they marked on that?
Yes, they are, basically.
Okay, where the holes in the wall are?
Yes, for instance, if you had number 15, that's item number 15, but again, it's 1.0.
Okay.
So some are and some aren't.
Gotcha. In all of your work there, looking at the ballistics, or the ballistic evidence in that trailer that day, was there any evidence that you saw with your eyes, based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, that led you to believe that any shots had originated from inside of that trailer going outside of that trailer?
Through all of the ballistic evidence found, the projectiles, the bullets, the bullet holes, and all those things, I found nothing at all that would indicate that any shots were fired from within the house going out of the house.
Based on your examination of that scene that night, and again, we're just talking about ballistics right now, with respect to the ballistic evidence that you collected and observed that night, did you have an opinion with respect to whether or not shots had originated outside and then shots had also occurred inside of that scene?
My opinion was that the shots did occur from outside. I felt that they were from the front yard area. I did find evidence, or what I believe to be evidence, that at least one shot was fired from the interior, but nothing indicated that anyone from the interior had fired actually out toward the front or the rear.
And even though you found at least 6 holes or 6 ballistic events at the front of that trailer and multiple projectiles and ballistic evidence from inside that trailer, or recovered it inside that trailer, is it your testimony that you only found 1 shell casing?
Yes, 1 cartridge casing inside the house.
And as part of your work in examining the ballistic evidence, is shell casings something that you would have been interested in trying to find related to this scene?
Absolutely, yes.
And did you look for shell casings that evening?
Extensively, yes.
Okay. All right, I want to transition now to blood evidence with you. And let me ask you this. With respect to shell casings, why are shell casings important evidence that can be recovered from a crime scene?
Well, there could be many reasons. Shell casing, first of all, if you have ballistic events that you have marked, let's take, for instance, in the front of the residence where we had BE 1.0, which was item number 15 that we recovered. Then we had 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If we were to look at or try to find the cartridge casings, which we did, that could confirm to us possibly what type of firearm was used, what type of ammunition was used, which could in turn link us to trace that back to potential suspects.
Okay. And with respect to the 1 shell casing that you did recover, what caliber shell casing was that?
.40 caliber.
Okay. So obviously, as part of your investigation in this case, would you be interested in looking for a .40 caliber weapon?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And with respect to shell casings, if you were to recover a suspect weapon, would you be able to match shell casings found at a scene with a suspect weapon?
It's very, very possible, yes.
And again, in this case, ultimately, where there's multiple scenes, would you be able to compare shell casings or match shell casings, compare shell casings from one scene to another scene to determine whether or not they'd been fired from the same weapon?
That is a great possibility as well, yes.
Now let's talk about blood or biological evidence at this scene. In addition to the ballistic evidence that you talked about, is something that you looked at and examined that evening DNA or biological evidence?
Yes.
Okay. And were you interested in looking at the blood, observing the blood, and trying to make determinations about what might have happened with respect to blood patterns in that scene?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes.
Okay. Tell us about that. What were you seeing with respect to the blood, and was there anything with respect to where that blood was located and anything that you could basically derive from the blood patterns?
Just from what we saw, and actually you have seen the same thing in the photos that we have looked at today, it's obvious that you can see what you could consider to be origins or a place that a person was in when the bloodletting event occurred. Obviously, if you're standing here and you cut yourself with a knife and you begin to bleed and I find you out by the door, I should be able to go back until where I stop finding blood, and at that point I could determine and reasonably say that that's where you were at when the bloodletting event occurred. If you look at the photographs that we looked at earlier, I was concerned with where the individuals, because I knew at that point I have 2 deceased individuals that have been murdered, and I want to try to find out where each individual was at the time the bloodletting events occurred.
I'm going to hand you another stack of pictures. We're going to start with State's Exhibit A212. It's not a published picture, sorry. Okay, can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A212?
A212, earlier I'd spoke to you about a chair, and we looked at an actual bullet hole, which was BE 13.0. I had showed that there were some alterations or characteristics indicating alterations to those deposits of blood on the floor. This is the other side of that chair where you saw that bullet. This is what appears to be simply blood that is been saturated at one point, maybe in clothing, and then the individual that shed this blood was then dragged across this floor, and it indicates obviously that it's going toward the kitchen area.
And when we talked about the ballistic event, I think it was ballistic event 13, and you talked about those patterns. Again, do those patterns carry into what you determined to be this drag mark?
Very consistent with it. Yes, it falls in line with it, actually.
And can you give me, let's go back to State's Exhibit A181. All right, State's Exhibit 181. Did you take some swabs of the blood in front of that chair?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And again, walk us through, let me see real quick. Where in that picture did you take the swabs?
There is a seam. Maybe I could just show you easier. That was this general area right here. There was a large pooling of blood that had coagulated, and I took some standards from that area.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A276? Did you identify and put a photo placard by the area that you swabbed?
Yes, I did.
We have State's Exhibit A276 up on the screen. Can you take a look at State's Exhibit A276? Tell the jury what they're looking at there.
A276, once again, is, I just testified that I had collected at least 2 swabs of blood from that area, and earlier I testified that I would take evidence from these 2 individual, what appeared to be individual stains, the one that you would see in the front and the one you would see in the rear, to determine what individual would have been there that shed that blood. So I would list that as item number 18. You can see in the background actually a bullet that is still there that we discussed earlier as well. So nothing has been altered at this point.
Now, just give me one second. This next series of pictures for a while are going to be non-published. All right, I handed you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A503. I don't know if I asked you to identify that already or not, but could you just tell the jury what they're looking at with the State's Exhibit A503?
Yes, A503 is my item number 18. It is my original label I printed on the 22nd of April 2016, and my initials are on the rear of that as well. And
can you tell the jury, how did you take that swab? Where did you submit it to? And was that eventually submitted to the lab for DNA testing?
I believe that eventually it was submitted for DNA testing to determine actually which victim's blood this was. And 2 swabs were actually collected, I believe, at that particular time. And again, it was our standard operating procedure, the care we take with collecting any standards or anything biological.
You're right, at this time, I believe the parties have a stipulation.
You want you want to state what it is, and we'll ask Mr. Parker here to acknowledge.
Yes, Your Honor. With respect to State's Exhibit A503, the swabs from the stain contained in that exhibit in the living room of 4077 Union Hill Road, also depicted in photo ID number 18, tested positive for blood, and the DNA profile of the blood from this swab contains Chris Rhoden Sr.'s DNA.
Mr. Parker?
That's correct.
The jury will find that that stipulation is established as fact, as if it had been established by evidence here in the courtroom.
In this same area of the living room, you identified that as being on the floor. Did you also find blood splatter on the wall, or what appeared to be blood splatter on the wall?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Talk about that. Tell us where you found that and what you did with it.
Item number 19 would ultimately be 2 swabs of blood, I believe we collected from the wall. You can see in the...
Let me go ahead. Let me give you State's Exhibit A277. Okay, State's Exhibit 8-277, you had just testified to item number 19.
Yes.
Tell the jury what they're seeing on the picture, or on the screen, and what you did with that.
Item number 19, again, would be just labeled as a blood stain, which is a deposit of blood on the surface, and swabs would be collected from that particular spot for to be analyzed.
Is there anything that sticks out to you with respect to any directionality of that blood or anything like that?
There are several. First of all, there's a lot of blood stains on this wall. Some of these stains do have directionality. It's a common practice, and in my training, that all of these stains, from what I see, are descending stains, which means they are traveling down when they struck this wall. And I do not do any kind of analysis with a descending stain because gravity has taken effect of that particular stain as it's flying through the air. From that point on, it is altered and it is simply a blood stain on the wall.
Did you take a swab of what you marked as stain 19?
Yes, I should have taken 2, I believe.
Before we move on from this picture, can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to what you have on right there?
Yeah, first of all, you'll see white Tyvek suit, latex gloves, and in the background you also see a trajectory rod with a sphere on it, which we spoke of earlier, that is used for the 3D scanning purposes.
Okay. And again, that Tyvek suit and those gloves, do they prevent your DNA from getting into that scene?
Yes.
Handy what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit 504. Can you take a look at that for me?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 504, can you tell us what that is?
Yes, it's again, it's my packaging with my original label. I have initialed it, and it's listed as my item number 19 we saw in the photograph, and it's 2 swabs of blood or suspected blood from the south wall of the living room.
Do you know, were those swabs eventually sent to the lab for DNA testing?
Yes, I believe they were.
And did you collect and take those swabs and store those swabs according to your standard operating procedure?
Absolutely, yes.
Your Honor, I believe we have another stipulation.
All right, state the stipulation then.
Your Honor, State's Exhibit A504, which are swabs from the stain on the wall of the living room of 4077 Union Hill Road, identified in the photo ID as number 19, tested positive for blood. The DNA profile of the blood from this swab contains Chris Rhoden Sr.'s DNA.
Mr. Parker,
Yes,
is that the stipulation?
yes.
All right. The jury will find that that stipulation has been established as fact, as if it had been established here in the courtroom through evidence.
And I don't know if I asked you to do this already or not, but can you point to the diagram on where that stain was or on the wall?
It should have been in this area right here. Actually, there's 19 in that area.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A182? State's Exhibit A182, that's up on the screen there. Can you tell the jury what you were capturing there and what that pattern or what that blood is showing you at that point?
Once again, we see the chair. This is in A182. See the corner of the chair, so we know basically where we are at that point. And we see the blood stain in the form of a transfer stain, it would appear, or a drag mark going across the living room floor, and it's going toward the kitchen. Also, within this photograph, because I know where they are, there are partial footwear impressions that are in blood there.
And again, as part of your documentation of the scene, did you continue to follow that blood trail as it moved through that residence?
Yes, I did.
Can you give me State's Exhibit 183? The next picture. Okay. Walk us through what they're saying. Take us from the chair and where that blood drag mark's headed.
As I stated earlier, we have the chair. That's the basic location where this blood appeared to originate from, and it appeared as though the drag marks that the individual was being dragged across the living room floor toward the kitchen, and this photograph we see where they're getting ready to enter into the kitchen.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
Your Honor, can he step down for a second?
Sorry.
Can he step down for a
Oh,
second?
sure, yeah.
Need a pointer too. See the pointer real quick. As the blood drag mark moves through the living room back towards the kitchen, does it appear in this area right here that it's broken or a disruption in it?
Slightly it does.
Okay. Tell us what you're seeing and what that area is showing you.
What I'm seeing here is the chair. I'm seeing blood transfer on the floor being dragged in that direction. I also see what I thought was a separate pattern on this side, and there's a swirl here, and it indicated to me that an individual most likely was murdered in that area, and this swirl would be caused by the individual being turned and then dragged in the same direction. Also, you see footwear impressions here and here. A lot going on in one photograph.
And at about the point in this area right here, is there a disruption in the drag, or is there a change in the pattern at all?
Yes, there appears to be somewhat of a change in this area. I believe that's due to the individuals being brought that area, as well as this rug probably being moved.
Okay. Thank you. Can you give me State's Exhibit? Is that, what do I got up there, 183? 184, please. Again, State's Exhibit 184, you don't have a picture of it, it's on the monitor. Is that just a closer view of what we were just talking about?
Yes, 184 is a little closer.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A213? Walk the jury through what they're seeing in State's Exhibit A213.
It's basically the same thing. I've just moved toward the kitchen area a little more, and now I've turned. And now we're looking at what I spoke of earlier, appeared to be a second pattern to me, where an individual would have bled. You see a large, I'm going to have to stand again.
Please, yeah.
You see a large accumulation of blood in this area. At some point, sometimes we will call that a blood pool. and blood will be shed in that area. There will be a pool, and in this case, at some point, the individual was turned and dragged toward the kitchen.
Can you speak on, again, with respect to this area here, there seems to be a pattern, and then a disruption or a movement of a little different pattern up in this area right here. Can you talk about that at all?
In my opinion, from what I saw that day, it was where at some point this rug had been moved or maybe had rolled up under the individual as they were being dragged.
Okay. Would that also be consistent with that rug being used to wipe that area?
It could be.
I want to go now to State's Exhibit A. Let's go to A279. Depicted in State's Exhibit A279, is that the area of the blood that you talked about with respect to pooling and the swing around?
Yes.
Okay. Did you take a swab or collect a swab of that area?
Yeah, there would have been 2 swabs of blood collected from that particular area.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A505. The swab that you collected, or the swabs that you collected in that area, did you identify those with a BCI item number?
Yes, they're evidence number 20. Once again, it's packaged in my package with my label and my initials. And I've listed it as 2 swabs of suspected blood from the center of the living room floor.
Listed as 2 swabs with suspected blood.
It's listed as 2 swabs of suspected blood from the center of the living room floor. Yes.
Again, with respect to those swabs, did you collect those swabs, maintain those swabs, and store those swabs according to your standard operating procedures?
Yes, I did.
And do you know whether or not those swabs were eventually sent for DNA testing?
Yes, they were tested.
Now we have another stipulation at this time.
All right. Please state the stipulation.
Thank you. With respect to State's Exhibit 505, which are, that is 505, right? That I handed
Yes,
you?
it is.
Okay. State's Exhibit 505, which are swabs from the stain on the floor of the living room of 4077 Union Hill Road, identified as photo ID 20. Those swabs tested positive for blood, and the DNA profile of the blood from those swabs contains Gary Rhoden's DNA.
Mr. Parker?
That's correct.
The jury shall find that stipulation has been established as fact, as if it had been established through evidence here in the courtroom.
In addition to the blood on the floor in that area of the living room, did you also find blood splatter on the back wall of that area of the living room?
Yes, I did.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A177? Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A177?
Yes, by now you're getting pretty familiar with the interior. This would be back out toward the door. You're seeing the back wall. Obviously, you can see the stain on the floor and the pattern that we just looked at.
And again, we point out that, was there a window or curtains or something in the back wall there?
Yes.
Where in the picture of those? Just in the center?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that area there.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A280? Again, can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A280?
Yes, this is obviously it's blood. It's a blood stain, blood that's been deposited on the wall. And we actually collected 2 additional swabs from that area mark those swabs as item number 21 in an attempt, once again, to be able to determine who was where within the residence.
My handy what's been marked for identification purposes. That State's Exhibit A506. Do you recognize the markings on State's Exhibit A506?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what State's Exhibit A506 is?
Yes, it's my evidence item number 21. Again, it's in my packaging. It has my seal on it. It has my original label. And it is obviously item number 21, 2 swabs of suspected blood, and it was from the wall in the living room between the cabinet and the curtain.
Again, did you collect, maintain, and store that item according to your standard operating procedures?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I believe we have another stipulation.
All right, please state that stipulation.
With respect to State Exhibit A506, those are swabs from the stain on the back wall of the living room area of 4077 Union Hill Road, identified as photo ID 21. Those swabs tested positive for blood, and the DNA profile associated with the blood from those swabs contains Gary Rhoden's DNA.
Mr. Parker,
Yes,
is that correct?
yes.
Again, the jury is instructed to find that that stipulation has been established as fact, as if it had been established by evidence here in the courtroom.
In addition to the blood on the wall in that area, did you also find blood on the ceiling?
Yes, there were multiple spatter stains on the ceiling in that general area.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A215? Can you tell the jury what's depicted in A215?
Yes, in A215, if you, first of all, look away from the ceiling, you can look at the curtain and you can see the cabinet next to it. If you remember, item number 21 was located between the two of them. So if you look from that area between the curtain and the cabinet and begin to look straight up and follow the basically the brown small pieces of paneling on the ceiling, you will begin to see spatter stains on the ceiling.
State's Exhibit A282.
A282.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get that. Let him get the picture of it. Thanks. Okay. A282.
A282, once again, we're holding up a numbered placard, and ultimately we would collect 2 swabs of blood from that area as well.
And A281, please. What's 281 depict?
A281, once again, the same photograph, but it's just panned in a little closer. It's a close-up of the spatter stains on the ceiling.
And with respect to that evidence depicted in State's Exhibit A545, which is the A545 is that diagram.
Yes.
I handed you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A507. Can you tell the jury, do you recognize the markings on the envelope marked as State's Exhibit A507?
Yes, A507 is evidence number 22. Its location will be in that general area of the living room. It corresponds with 20 and 21 where they were located. And evidence number 22 is 2 swabs of suspected blood from the ceiling, basically near the cabinet on the east wall. And once again, it's my original packaging with my label and my initials.
All right, we have a stipulation with respect to State's Exhibit A507.
All right, please state the stipulation.
The parties agree and stipulate that State's Exhibit A507 was not sent to the lab for DNA testing.
Mr. Parker, is that the stipulation?
Yes,
The jury, is instructed to find that that stipulation has been established as fact, as if it had been established by evidence here in the court.
Can I get State's Exhibit A-186? You testified earlier about noticing shoe prints in
Yes.
this scene.
Yes.
If you could, tell us a little bit about shoe print evidence. How is shoe print evidence deposited in an area? Just give us some basics.
Well, it could be a number of ways in this particular way. Obviously, if you have a bloody footwear or shoe print, then you would have to have it, first of all, have a source of that blood. So we know that a bloodletting event would occur, and for that blood to get on the bottom of that shoe, an individual would have to be in that vicinity where the bloodletting event occurred in order to get blood deposited on the bottom of their shoe. And if that individual then walked, then that individual would transfer blood from the bottom of their shoe, in this case to a floor, and ultimately you would have a footwear impression in blood.
And with respect to, let's use blood since we're talking about blood, and footprints, is it more likely, based on your knowledge, your training, your experience, is it more likely for a shoe print to be tracked or picked up in blood when that blood is wet or fresh as opposed to dry and old?
Absolutely, yes.
Now, there at BCI, do you have experts in the lab who work in trace and shoe print type evidence?
Yes, we do.
So, to that end, as part of your work at a scene, when you have an imprint, a shoe imprint that may be related to the crime or the crime scene, do you try to document that or collect that so that it can be examined later on by experts?
Yes, I do.
Walk the jury through how you go about collecting and documenting footprint. Let's start with documenting first. Documenting footprint evidence.
Well, before you could document a footprint, obviously you have to locate it. We located these shoe impressions, and one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is these impressions were found. I testified earlier that I saw them before I ever entered. When I first entered, obviously after we had the search warrant, I knew where the footwear impressions were, and at that point I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to process those, what kind of photography I would be doing, what kind of chemicals, if any, I would use. And so I took something which was parchment paper that is supplied, we had on our crime scene vehicles. Parchment paper was used quite frequently for us to package bloody evidence to keep it from transferring blood to another substance. At that point, the footwear impressions and the blood was dry when I got there. And so I actually took parchment paper, we laid it over the footwear impressions, and due to the fact that there was only going to be one other agent working with me, which was Agent Price, we both knew that parchment paper means don't step there. And so that's how we were able to preserve this evidence while we were continuing to work the scene. Now, to the point of what I did at that particular time, yes, I would document the location, and I've tried to do that with these overall shots so that you can, or anybody can look at these shots later, these photographs, and be able to tell, well, I know where the plywood is, and I know where the footwear impression is in relation to the plywood, so I know basically where they're at in the house. That's the ultimate goal. From there, you would move up closer, and you would ultimately scale that footwear impression and try to get as much characteristics or detail from that footwear impression as possible.
Question. You said when you very first observed these footprints, they were already dry in the blood. Is that correct?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Now, or the blood associated with the footprint, I guess, was already dry. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you talked about preserving it, documenting it. How do you go through actually photographing it and then ultimately collecting any shoe prints in this scene?
Yes. Well, we've gotten to the documentation portion where obviously we would photograph them, scale them. There were some methods that I used. For instance, one of the footwear impressions that I collected, I used a chemical called leucocrystal violet. Leucocrystal violet is a chemical that we would apply to for instance, in this case, a bloody footwear impression, and it will actually help enhance detail in that actual footwear impression that is not really visible or is latent to the eye when we're trying to look at it. So if I see half of a footwear impression and I put leucocrystal violet on that footwear impression, then I may see the whole footwear impression.
And leucocrystal violet, does it alter the footprint or just enhance it so you can see it better?
It enhances it. Leucocrystal violet, when we mix it, it would come in two parts. One would be the leucocrystal violet, the other would be hydrogen peroxide. I think it was 1:4 mixture. And one thing about the leucocrystal violet is it has a fixative in it. And a fixative means that it's not supposed to make the footwear impression swell. It's supposed to hold the blood where it's at. So if I apply it properly, then it should hold that footwear impression and keep it from growing and getting bigger.
Okay. And again, leucocrystal violet, is that pretty well accepted in the crime scene investigation world? Is that an accepted way of enhancing and preserving these footprints?
It absolutely was, at least in 2016.
Okay. So, and again, that's back when you did this job. You do a different
Yes.
job now.
Yes.
Okay. So, at some point, is a decision made to actually cut out the area around the footprint so that you could preserve it?
Yes, there were a couple that I actually did cut out. I cut the whole floor with it, which was another reason why we waited to the end. I told you earlier that we covered these and preserved them. I knew that it was going to be messy, and it really was a chore to get through the flooring to get these up. So that was another reason why we put the parchment paper, and I believe we actually put these large boxes. They look similar to a pizza box. Turned it upside down so there's actually no pressure on it. And we were able to go back later when we were closer to the end, when we felt like we had gotten the majority of what we could get done at that time, and then we did cut those up.
And again, with respect to the pictures that you took, the documentation, did you document these footprints as they were in that scene before you did leucocrystal violet or any other attempts to preserve or save that?
Yes, they were all photographed and documented as they were when they were found.
And again, with respect to the photos and documents, all of those photos and documents would be preserved so that other experts could take a look at and compare these footprints if the need would arise later in the investigation.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A185? All right, State's Exhibit A185. Can you tell us what we're looking at in State's Exhibit A185?
In A185, again, it's, I think we're familiar with the general location. We had swabs taken from that area earlier. We have the chair, we have the alterations in the blood stain going toward the kitchen. And then we begin to see some faint footwear impressions.
Okay. And I'm going to do two things with you. I'm going to switch out the biological evidence, State's Exhibit A545. I'm going to put up State's Exhibit A547. And the second thing I'm gonna do is probably have you step out so you can actually, you talk about footprints in the picture. If you step out, can you tell the jury or show the jury on the screen where these footprints are?
In this general area.
And then what about on the TV screen?
Again, it would be in that area. You can see some there. There. There's some small indications in a few other locations. Actually, right here.
Can you give us State's Exhibit A283? And with respect to those two prints that you first talked about, did you identify those with evidence, placards, and BCI numbers?
Ultimately, yes, we did.
And was one of those ultimately identified as item number 23?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And where in the picture, where in the diagram was item 23?
It's in this area.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes, or put up what's been marked as State's Exhibit A283. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
I'm sorry, coming your way. This is actually the footwear impression, one of the footwear impressions, and I believe this would have ultimately be marked as item number 23.
Would you take different pictures of those under different lighting? So some brighter lighting, some less lighting, so you could pick up the detail on them?
Yes, you would sometimes change your camera lens to a macro lens. Sometimes you would use no flash, lower flash, sometimes use oblique lighting. Whatever you could do to try to get as much detail of that particular object.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A284? Agent Henshaw, you can sit down. I don't want to wear you out there. Okay, can you tell the jury what they're looking at with State's Exhibit A284?
Yes, in Exhibit 284, it's basically the same footwear impression. I believe we've established it was item number 23. I'm starting to pan in a little closer, and I'm starting to see some characteristics of the shoe that I think somebody more qualified than me should ultimately be aware of.
Okay. And again, when you talk about somebody more qualified than you, are you talking about the experts back at your lab or experts?
Absolutely,
externally?
yes.
And when you talk about detail, what's standing out to you where you're like, uh-oh, they may be able to do something with this?
What's actually standing out to me at that particular time was the fact that, can I stand again, please?
Sure.
In this area of the shoe, I'm not seeing any kind of wear pattern at all.
Okay.
That meant something to me.
Okay. And again, ultimately, our opinions with respect to what that means established or given by the experts in the lab.
Yes.
But at some point, you know, or do you know you got to collect that?
Yes, I do.
All right. Can you give us a State's Exhibit A286? Again, as part of your documentation, do you put a ruler next to these prints and start documenting how they look with a ruler or a measurement next to them?
Yes, we try to scale those as best as possible and have our scale as accurate or as flat on the surface as we can. It does make a difference.
State's Exhibit A285.
A285, are we ready?
Yes.
Once again, it's another photograph. It's basically the same footwear impression, but we're continuing to get a little closer.
And State's Exhibit A287.
A287, once again, same footwear impression, just a little closer.
Okay. And again, are you trying to document this as closely as possible and from as many different angles as possible so that later the experts can look at how they looked the day that you saw them?
Absolutely, yes.
State Exhibit 288. And at some point, did you put your BCI item number or photo placard down next to this so you could identify that mark?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and is that what's depicted in State's Exhibit A289?
Basically the same photograph. Camera's actually sitting on a tripod, not moving, and I just slid a item 23 in there so that we could have that later for identification purposes.
In addition, you've been focusing in on that area of the tread that you pointed out. Did you take other pictures that showed other areas of the tread with respect to that shoe print?
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A290. Again, can you tell the jury what we're looking at there in A290?
A290, it's the same photograph with item number 23. I've just panned in a little closer, zoomed in, and trying to get more detail in the heel area, or what I believe to be the heel area of that shoe.
Now, you testified that after you documented this, and again, it looks like you took plenty of pictures. After you documented this shoe print, you testified that at some point you actually cut that piece of flooring up. Is that
Yes,
correct?
at some point. Yeah, it was later.
Walk us through, or walk the jury through, what you did to cut that flooring out.
At the particular time, I said that I had parchment paper, and ultimately I took some tape. I had already removed the parchment paper at that point to do some more photography, to number it and to scale it, and I put more parchment paper on that, taped the outer perimeters, and then went to work on it, cutting it with power tools.
Were you able to successfully remove that piece of flooring?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit here. I'll take those. State's Exhibit A508. Do you recognize the markings on State's Exhibit A508?
Yes, I do. A508, this is, earlier I actually said that we had boxes that looked like pizza boxes. This is one of those. We would use these to package clothing, bloody clothing, footwear impressions, anything that we wanted to try our best to preserve that so that it wouldn't be crushed or smashed. And this is actually one of my boxes. You can see that I have initialed it, as well as have my evidence labeling it as item number 23.
Now, there are all kinds of other markings on that item.
Yes.
When it goes to various labs or various people take that for testing, is it standard practice for folks to put their marks on it, or maybe their own individual case number on it?
Yes, normally after something is opened, then it's resealed. The individual that opens it and reseals it, they will seal it, and then they will put their initials, and it's sometimes case number, but mostly it's their initials.
I'm going to have you open that exhibit. I don't know if you want gloves or not, but I'm going to have you display it.
Try to get it open and then I'll put gloves on.
Okay, can you go ahead and open that for us? Your Honor, can we display this?
No objection.
Okay, do you recognize the item that's inside State's Exhibit A508?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, I'm going to have you just slowly walk that in front of the jury. Tell them what that is.
This is basically what we've been seeing in the photographs. Earlier I said I put on a chemical called crystal violet, which will ultimately dye that stain, and it will bring out portions of that blood stain that we cannot see without that dye.
Was that item State's Exhibit 508, was that item collected, maintained, and stored in accordance with your training and standard operating procedures?
Yes, it is, and it was.
Was that shoe impression there ultimately sent to your lab and other labs for experts to take a look at it?
Yes, it was.
And again, I don't want you to tell me what the results were, but do you know if other experts were able to form an opinion about the brand and size of the shoe that made that impression?
I believe so, yes.
In addition to that shoe print, were you able to collect the other shoe print that was right in that area?
Yes.
Okay. And again, was that shoe print, that one that we just showed was 23. Did you have one that you marked as BCI item number or photo placard item 24?
I believe so, yes.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A291? Yeah, State's Exhibit A291 up there.
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A291?
Again, it's a transfer of blood causing a footwear impression in blood on the floor. It's in the living room area and somewhat close to item number 23.
And again, I've put up that diagram, or both items 23 and 24 depicted in the overhead diagram that we changed out and displayed for the jury.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can we put up State's Exhibit A292? With respect to State's Exhibit A292, as you examined this item or this print in that scene, were you noticing the same type of detail that drew your attention?
Yes, I did.
And did you go through the same type of documentation with respect to this footprint, different lenses, different lighting, all of that stuff?
Yes, multiple. First of all, any footwear, we put it on a tripod. Our camera was put on a tripod. Sometimes we use a remote, other times we don't have to. I tried to put it on a tripod, level the actual camera. We have small levels. Put that on the camera. It's then leveled, and different lightings are used, as I testified earlier, sometimes oblique lighting, different angles. Just do the best we can to document and get as much definition as we can.
With respect to State's Exhibit A291 and your item 24 up there that you're testifying to, again, did you do a lot of documentation of this item before you ever put the Lucal Crystal Violet on it?
Yes.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A293? Ultimately, did you mark this as your item number, put a marker next to it?
Yes, I did. I put marker number 24 beside it.
Can I get 294? State's Exhibit A294. Again, Are you just taking pictures with different lighting so that you can preserve this and ultimately send it to the lab?
Yes.
State's Exhibit A295. At some point, you put a ruler next to it, again,
Yes.
so it'll be documented as it was at the scene for lab purposes.
Yes.
Is that what's depicted in State's Exhibit A295?
A295, yes. We've applied a scale as well as the marker.
Jump me to State's Exhibit A297. State's Exhibit A297 that you have in front of you that's displayed. Again, can you tell the jury what they're looking at there?
Yes, it's a photograph, once again, of item number 24, but we've zoomed in, tried to get as much detail. That particular area of the shoe, looking for anything that could potentially be measured, something that we could use later to identify that, an accurate measurement or something.
Okay. And again, is that work that's ultimately done at the lab by the experts who render those opinions?
Yes, it is.
With respect to State's Exhibit A297, give me 298 real quick. And A298, again, is that the same item, just different picture, right?
Yes.
Did you use Leucocrystal Violet on this ultimately to help enhance it and preserve it?
I think I may have on this one as well.
Okay. And ultimately, did you decide to try to remove this print, or the flooring that contained this print, the same way you did the other one?
Yes, I did.
And walk us through how you did that?
Once again, something was placed over top of it to try to protect it from any debris or anything, and then we cut into the floor to the point where we're able to remove this footwear impression.
Handy what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A509. You recognize the markings on State's Exhibit A509?
Yes, this is my packaging. It's got my label, and it's got my marker of evidence number 24, and has my initials on the original.
In addition to your markings, are there other markings from where that item went to a lab?
Yes, there are.
Multiple labs, I guess.
Yes, sir.
If you could, just like you're doing, go ahead and open that up for us. Do you recognize the item that's inside
Yes.
that exhibit?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, it's item number 24. We've been looking at the photographs, and it has had Leucocrystal Violet applied to it to enhance it.
Your Honor, this time I ask permission to publish
Any
State's
objections?
exhibit.
All right, you may publish it to the jury.
State's Exhibit 509, was that collected, maintained, and stored according to your training on how to collect these types of items and your standard operating procedure?
Yes.
In addition to the prints that you marked as items 23 and 24, was there another print that you marked as item 47?
Yes, there was.
I'm going to put on the screen what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A427?
Yes.
Can you tell us, or tell the jury, what's depicted in State's Exhibit A427?
A427 is a photograph where a scale has already been applied. Obviously, there were previous photographs. We actually saw some of those. But it's a scale of the partial footwear impression close to the front entrance door to the residence.
And could you do me a favor? Could you use the pointer and show the jury on the diagram where that item is?
That's right here, number 47.
Okay. And is that, in the picture there, is that the door that's depicted there on the left?
Yes, it is.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A426? Okay, again, can you tell the jury what we're looking at here?
Yes, Exhibit A426 is the same footwear impression that would ultimately be item number 47, and it does have leucocrystal violet applied to it, it appears.
Okay. Now, before putting that leucocrystal violet on it to preserve it and enhance it, did you run through the same series of document type photos that you did with the other pictures?
Yes, we did the same thing with it that we've done since the beginning of this today. We started off from a distance, we moved in. From there, we did not touch it. We got micro photos of it, then we began to put scales in it and markers.
And again, those pictures that you would have taken of that footprint before the leucocrystal violet, is that part of the photos that you reviewed as part of your testimony in this case?
Yes, it is.
And again, did those photos truly and accurately depict the way that footprint impression looked when you saw it when you initially entered 4077 Union Hill Road?
Absolutely, yes.
Ultimately, did you put a marker next to that and attempt to collect that as evidence?
Yes, I did.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A438? Can you tell the jury what State's Exhibit A438 is?
Exhibit A438 is a photograph of this footwear impression, item number 47, after leucocrystal violet has been applied.
And State's Exhibit A439.
A439 is actually relatively the same, but we're trying to work with a different light at that point to maybe get a little different detail.
With respect to State's Exhibit A439 and your item number 47, as you looked at that shoe, that shoe print on the floor in blood, again, did you notice the type of detail that you knew the lab would be interested in taking a look at?
Yes, I did.
All right. And were you ultimately able to collect that?
Yes, sir.
Walk the jury through what you did to collect it?
Once again, preserved it in the same manner as we had with the other two, and used a power tool to extract that from the floor.
I'm handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 532.
This was the
Can you tell the jury, do you recognize the markings on State's Exhibit A532?
Yes, Exhibit A532 is evidence item number 47. It has my original label on it. It has my initials, and this is my original packaging.
As with the other exhibits, do you recognize other markings on there that indicate that that item went to the lab for further analysis?
Yes.
while you're doing that, I'll ask you some other questions. Your pictures that we talked about with respect to this item 47, that's your BCI item 47, this bloody footprint. All of those pictures before you put the leucocrystal violet on it, all of the pictures with the leucocrystal violet, all those pictures, would those have been available for experts to look at as well?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go ahead and open State's Exhibit A532 for us? Can you tell the jury, do you recognize what's inside the box marked as State's Exhibit A532?
Yes, A532 is my item number 47. It was collected there at that residence. And it's, we've seen photographs, and it has been enhanced with leucocrystal violet.
Now, is that box or that piece of evidence heavier than the other first two?
This area of the floor was extremely thick.
Okay. Was it a different pattern, a different type of wood or something like that?
Yes, basically, yes.
Your Honor, request permission to publish State's Exhibit A532 for the jury.
Any objection?
Okay.
May publish to the jury.
All right, can you give me State's Exhibit A373? We talked about that blood trail, and so far in your testimony, you've tracked it basically through the living room towards the kitchen. I've handed you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A373. Can you orient the jury to that picture?
A373, so far the majority of the photographs we've looked at, and I keep telling the same thing, that they're from generally the front door area. Now, I am now beyond that point, and I'm back into the kitchen area, and now I'm focusing forward back toward the living room area. This is one of the first photographs we've seen from this angle.
And the rugs that you had talked about near the disruption in that blood pattern, are those visible in that picture?
Yes, they are.
I'll show you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A372. As part of your work in this case, did you just keep tracking that blood trail through the kitchen and to where it ultimately led up?
Yes, I did.
Is that 372?
It's 373.
Let me get A372. Okay. Again, can you tell the jury what we're looking at here and where that picture is taken from?
Once again, this is taken from the kitchen area. You can see the treadmill, the rugs. Earlier we looked at a blue tote and a kitchen table, and if you recall, item number 33 was under that, which was the Hornady 40 caliber cartridge case. So now we're in that general area, and begin to see footwear impressions there as well.
All right. State's Exhibit A371. Continue to walk us through where that blood trail's going and what they're looking at.
There's some things here that are very remarkable to me. First of all, yes, we're in the kitchen area, and we're moving back toward the bedroom area where ultimately both victims would have been dragged. after the murders. You see blood on the floor and the directionality going that direction, but then you begin to see footwear impressions that are on top of the blood that would indicate that the individual that drugged them back there then walked back through that area.
And show the jury where this footwear impression is or what you're looking at there.
There's some parcels in this area and a parcel up in that area near the rug.
I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit A374. Can you tell the jury what they're looking at with respect to State's Exhibit A374?
Yes, A374 again is another footwear impression, and you can see some consistency throughout the scene. The footwear impressions that we have already looked at in photos. This obviously is in the kitchen area, and this would be going back before any scales or anything of that nature were applied.
In State's Exhibit 375, A375?
Yes, A375, once again, it's basically the same photograph that we saw. Ultimately, this is going to be listed as item number 35, but for purposes of documentation, no scales or no rules have been placed there yet.
You beat me to it, but ultimately, did you mark that and put scales on it?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you give me State's Exhibit A384? And you have a series of pictures that you just passed over there. Again, can you tell the jury, I'm not going to put those up there for us, but can you tell the jury basically what those are?
It's been kind of the theme of looking at these footwear impressions that there are multiple photographs that might not mean a whole lot to us now, but at the time we have to realize that our cameras, we can only see so much detail on those cameras, and so we can't take a picture, say with an iPhone, and look at it and say I like that and move on. We have to continue to take more and more photographs to make sure that we do capture the detail. We have to do it from different angles, different lightings. The photographs we passed over are photographs of me doing that.
Okay, and again, basically that was probably State's Exhibits 385 through 391 that you just blew past, which is fine. Same, more of the same, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And ultimately, do all of the pictures, or are all of the pictures available for the lab if needed?
Yes.
Can you give me State's Exhibit, give me 384 again. Oh, that's 384 up there, right? All right, tell us what's in State's Exhibit 384.
It's a photograph of item number 35. We've established that that was in the kitchen area, and now we obviously have it marked with item 35, and we have a scale in the photograph.
And the location of that exhibit, is that identified on the overhead diagram as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can you give us the general location for that?
Yes. Item 35 is in this area.
With respect to these overhead crime scene diagrams, are those to scale? Are they?
They are not to scale.
Okay. Is the purpose just to generally track the location of where that evidence is?
Yes, just give a general idea for what we're doing here today.
With respect to your item 35 that's depicted in that picture, did you also collect that item as well as you collected the others, the same way you collected the others?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Walk us through what you did. That's on linoleum. Walk us through how you got that out.
The linoleum was a little different. We were able to cut that and just it released fairly easy, and we were able to take that footwear impression as well, similar to what we've done so far.
going to show you what's been marked for identification purposes. State's Exhibit A520. State's Exhibit A520, can you take a look at that? Can you tell the jury, do you recognize the markings on State's Exhibit A520?
Yes, A520 is my evidence number 35. Same article that we've been discussing, the footwear impression in the kitchen area. That's packaged in my package and has my original label on it with my seal and initials.
Can you go ahead and look inside State's Exhibit A520 for me? Do you recognize what's in there?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what it is?
Yes, it's the linoleum section of item number 35 located in the kitchen area.
Your Honor, can I publish this?
Any objections, you may publish it to the jury.
And with respect to State's Exhibit A520, does this item have other markings that indicate that it also went to the lab?
Yes, it does.
And was State's Exhibit A520 collected, maintained, and stored the way you've been trained to collect this type of evidence?
Yes, sir, it was.
And was it collected, maintained, and stored according to your standard operating procedures?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, I'm about to transition into another topic, so I don't know if...
Probably be a good time, probably to stop. We're not going to finish today.
No.
I think we've already decided that.
Just a moment, Judge.
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple more questions, really quick, and I'll finish up. All right, let's go back to the ballistic evidence, State's the shell casing, which was your item 33, I believe.
Yes, it is.
Where was that found?
It was found in the kitchen area between the back wall and a table.
Your Honor, we have a stipulation with respect to item number 33. But let me get the exhibit number real quick. Exhibit. It'll be right in there. It's A518. State's Exhibit A518. It's my understanding that the parties have agreed or entered into a stipulation with respect to DNA testing of that item.
All right, you wish to put that on the record then?
Yes, Your Honor. State's Exhibit A518, which was the shell casing, identified as item number 33 from the kitchen area of 4077 Union Hill Road, was submitted to the lab for DNA testing. There was insufficient data on that item for DNA comparison.
Mr. Parker, is that the stipulation?
Yes.
All right. And the jury is instructed to find that stipulation as fact, as if it had been established by evidence here in the courtroom.
And why would you submit that shell casing for DNA testing?
Well, there's always the possibility. We've not had very good luck with finding DNA on a fired cartridge case, but it could happen, and it could indicate maybe an individual that had handled that. I talked about touch DNA earlier, gave an example of it. How you touch something, we swab that, we have your DNA. That's a possibility, and that's something we did look into.
And is your understanding, based on your knowledge, your training, your experience in this field, that when a shell casing is fired, the heat and the pressure from firing that can negatively impact the presence of DNA on that shell casing? It
Usually destroys it.
I'm not done with this witness, but
Understand.
I'm ready to transition to
All right,
another.
understood. So, is it acceptable with counsel for both sides that we stop at this time, since we're not going to finish this witness anyway?
Absolutely.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will be going to your places of destination, home or otherwise, for the weekend, and will be coming back on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. The same procedure will be, we'll have the same procedure at 9 o'clock Monday morning. You're to report to the jury room. You'll be brought up from there by court personnel. Because you're going home, and you're going to have several days here, and because you've had a week of evidence presented to you this week, there'll be a natural tendency for people to ask you questions, maybe. I hope that doesn't happen, but it's very possible it could. It's also a natural tendency to kind of unload and discuss things. But you must remember the admonition, because it's extremely important that you follow the admonition. You are not to discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. You're not to permit anyone to discuss this case with you or in your presence. You're not to form or express an opinion concerning this case until it's finally submitted to you for deliberation and verdict. You are to do no research at all concerning this case, either as to the facts or as to the law. You are not to read, listen to, or view any reports or accounts of this case from any source whatsoever, and that would include the internet, Facebook, social media sites. It would also include newspapers, radio, or television. And you are to have no contact, of course, with any participants in the trial, and that would include witnesses, parties, or counsel. With that, I do thank you for your dedication to duty this week, and we'll look forward to having you back here, all of you, on Monday. You may please take your badges, your jury badges, with you. Try to remember to wear them when you come back on Monday. You are to leave your notepads here on your seat. Does counsel for either the state or the defense have anything further before we adjourn for the day?
No, thank you, Judge.
No, Your Honor.
All right. And we are adjourned until Monday morning at 9 o'clock. You all were, well, let me say one other thing. The court has put on a recording for another trial that we had. It was another case entirely, but we had one scheduled for Monday. I have put a recording on telling that jury that that trial is canceled. That does not affect you at all. You're all to be back here at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. All right, that we are adjourned.